Hello, and thank you for tuning into the Art of SBA Lending podcast. Last week, we released part one of a two-part series featuring some up-and-coming leaders in the SBA industry. And today, we're going to share the remainder of that conversation. So without further ado, let's get into it.
You either want to do SBA lending or you don't.
It's a different grind. People think that salespeople just like schmooze and drink and play golf. It's a grind.
Dry January, baby.
And
Do you guys have any ideas on how we can bring change and improvements to SBA lending?
One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from my father, and he told me,
Guys, the reviews are in. SBA lenders are calling CorpSmart the best due diligence firm in the industry. CorpSmart is a one-stop shop for all of your due diligence needs, and in SBA lending, there's a lot. Searches, filings, vehicles, you name it. I remember I brought a deal in one time that involved an airplane. My credit guy looked at me and he said, "How are we going to go about perfecting a lien on an airplane?" I said, "I don't know, call CorpSmart." If you're not already outsourcing your due diligence, one, you're probably wasting a lot of precious hours that you could be using to go find more loans. And two, you could make a mistake, especially if you're lending across multiple states because every state is different. If you're looking to streamline and get more efficient this year, this is an easy layup. They can connect right into your LOS so you can order your searches with a click of a button and they'll appear right in their placeholder. To discuss your due diligence needs, visit the CorpSmart website at www.corp-smart.com. And you can let them know I sent you. Had a sheet with like 15 things. We're on number 3. Rob, fire round here. Just want to ask you, like, think about a mentor and think about like a piece of advice they gave you. And can you share that with us? And I want to go to everyone with this.
This advice came from outside of the SBA world, actually. I was talking to someone and I had just finished up getting my MBA, and I asked her what, she also got an MBA, and I was like, what's the most important thing you learned from that? And she said, remember, the stuff you learn now, you may not use until later, but it's still important. And I think there's a lot of things with the SBA where, we read a notice or we read something from NAGL that comes out, and it may not be applicable now, but it will be applicable later. And I think that's another big thing with leadership too. What someone tells you now about their life, about their family, about their career, advancement goals, or their aspirations, you may not be able to do something about it now, but you can do something about it later. So it's really important to remember what people are telling us and what's going on, because we can use that later in our careers to help someone develop, if that's hiring them to a different shop, if it's helping them get to a different position that they've always wanted to get to. But take the time to notice what's in front of you and what you're learning, and keep mental note of that so you can use it later.
Yeah, not only consciously do that, that's good advice, but I've had that happen. Like, I've subconsciously done that too, where I've heard something and it just went somewhere deep in my mind. And then like 8 years later, I'm doing something, and after I've done it and it's worked or whatever, like I've been like, oh, wait a minute, didn't I look back at something I read and I was like, wow, it literally told me exactly what to do. I didn't listen to it right there, but it was just like in my brain and somehow helped me do this thing like so many years later. So probably, I guess it ties together.
We call that the mind palace, because your mind is a palace in all these little rooms, and you don't necessarily go into every room every day, but.
Well, my palace is, there's a lot of echoes in there. If you yell.
That's funny. I've always thought of my mind as a bunch of banker boxes. Like, I've just got all these banker boxes in my brain, and through this wind down, I had to redo something I haven't done in probably 10 years. And I really felt like I was dusting off a banker box in my brain to figure out how to do a mail merge. I hadn't done a mail merge. In probably 15 years. I had somebody else do it. It's been so long, but I remember it. It was in there. It was dusty, but it was in there.
Now you have ChatGPT that can do everything for you.
Yeah.
So.
Oh my gosh. I can't wait until we get to talk about AI.
Okay, yeah, that's
That's
number
like further down.
37 on the
It's
list.
like,
All right,
I know.
Molly, did you give your advice yet?
Yeah. I've actually got two. One that's specific to SBA lending. My mentor during the Future Lending Leaders Program was Carolyn Kelly at 4A, and she had told me one time, you either want to do SBA lending or you don't want to do SBA lending. And so there's a lot of times where I'm in a situation where we're just trying to be in the middle. Yeah, kind of. I want to close this loan and say it's SBA, but I also don't want to have to jump through these hoops to do it. And it's just not going to work out like that. You either have to be all in or go down the street somewhere. Like it's critical that you're willing to make the sacrifices and put the hard work and the long hours and everything else into an SBA deal. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
Damn, I like that. Want to make some Art of SBA merch with that one.
Yeah. And then one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from my father. And he told me, do not ever feel guilty for dropping what you're doing to spend time with your kids. And that has really stuck with me in terms of from a leadership standpoint. I used to be really nervous about taking a day off because, I'm going to come back and they're going to look at me bad because I didn't finish this thing or, whatever. And it just made me not want to take a day off. And I know how that made me feel. I know how that impacted my production. And I just want to make sure that anybody that works with me, for me, what have you, I am going to respect your work-life balance. Like, that is so important. And you don't even have to tell me what you're going to be doing. Like, if you want the day off, just say, I'm not going to be here tomorrow. And it's built some really great relationships to have that outlook, have that approach.
It's obviously good advice, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking of something that happened earlier too. Like, we're recording this the week of New Year's Day. It's after New Year's now, but people take time off around the holidays, and the market, meaning the brokers and the borrowers, they have that thing that they want to buy, that they need the loan to close, right? So here I am, the day after, New Year's or whatever, getting calls, hey, where are we with this deal? And I'm like, well, my underwriter is taking some time off, so it's going to be next week. But it's just crazy that, you come back the day after Christmas or the day after New Year's and you're right back to the grind, and people want things now. And obviously, this is all Jeff Bezos's fault, but so if you're going to create that environment, like, you actually need to staff it correctly so that you can let people do that. Cause that's the problem. Cause even though you should get that time off, that doesn't mean our borrowers are going to wait longer to get stuff done.
Well, and that's setting proper expectations, right? Or communicating early on these things. It's also shadowing different people's roles. Again, this is opportunity that comes up at smaller shops when you've got infill afterwards. Things happen. And I think I think I'm thinking about FSG specifically, being able to rely on your counterparts to pick up where you left off, I think is really, really important. And filling those spaces in with non-toxic people. If you're growing and you need to be able to do that, hire as you're growing, not when you've already grown, right? Be proactive versus reactive as much as possible anyway.
Doesn't work like that, with when you're like looking at the numbers, like people with their budgets and it's insane, Jane. But what you said about shadowing other people and other roles is actually, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that would help bridge those gaps we were talking about earlier with the BDO saying we need to close, or just like that sort of hope versus reality, is because we don't know. Like, a lot of people just don't know what it's like in those other seats. And yeah. So
Take an underwriter with you golfing one day. Let them see what you have to do
is that what you
to
think I
rein in
do all
those
day, Jane?
deals.
Golf?
I'm not saying that that's what
Come
you do.
cause I'm in sales.
I'm saying when I was in credit, I've been brought on different things, and I got to see it's a different grind. People think that salespeople just like schmooze and drink and play golf. It's a grind,
Dry
you
January,
know, and
baby.
it's a grind, and you're the face of any like no on that front end. Like it can be
Yeah.
brutal. It is the glamorous piece, right? It is the sexy piece, but it's a grind, and not everybody can.
No, I love it. Yeah. I mean, for sure it's a grind. Like if you're thinking, get into sales, great. I mean, I worked on Thanksgiving. I worked every single night for the past several months. I work every weekend. But also I'm a little bit of a freak of nature. I don't think you necessarily have to do that. Maybe in your first year or two, but eventually, unless you're just sick, like me and some of my other friends, like, you can actually get it down to like a 50 or 60 hour deal. But, by the way, did you give us your advice or from your mentor, Jane?
So similar to Rob and Molly, I would say I don't really have an SBA specific mentor. I've learned a lot from a lot of different people, but some advice that I got fairly recently that I think applies is to a lot of things is to stop shooting on yourself.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Say,
you
you say
know,
the S word?
sh- stop shooting on yourself instead of, the other S word. I think
Oh, okay.
that
I was literally like, what is she saying?
should
Okay.
stop shooting on yourself. It leaves wiggle room for adaptability. I think it leaves wiggle room for, if there was a mistake that was made and you missed something, as a salesperson, you miss an eligibility thing that you felt like you should have seen 2 months ago, right? Or as a credit underwriter, you get a call from the portfolio manager who tells you that your loan's in first payment default. Like there are a lot of shoulds in this space that, I think the impulse would to be shamed or to feel bad, but I think more so you should take it as a learning lesson. Even on the front end when you're originating things like, well, the deal should look like this. Yes, it should look like that, but there are exceptions because there are exceptions. I'm not saying exceptions should be rules, but you've got to be careful of shitting on yourself.
One of one of the pieces of advice that I give my closers when I start is you have to be, even in the interview, I say you have to be okay with making mistakes because they will happen and they will happen often. And if you're not okay with making a mistake, this is not the industry for you. So
But it's a matter of learning from those mistakes and not making them multiple times over.
Well, and I guarantee you when you see those mistakes, you don't and they're big, they never happen again. And you start to apply that knowledge in other places, right? It's that evolution of understanding, not just being checklist oriented, right?
Looking back at like the last year or so, like what trends are you seeing in the SBA sort of lending on the origination side? Either something that excites you or something that concerns you.
If you've been a fan of the show for a while, then you know one of my favorite companies to work with is Rapid Business Plans. Last year alone, their business plans helped facilitate over $600 million in government guaranteed lending. They're on track to beat that this year. More and more small business lenders and their borrowers are relying on Rapid to help with the business plan, projections, and assumptions because their team goes the extra mile to ensure everything is done fast and done right. And that helps streamline the process. They're great at export business plans, by the way, which are critically important at protecting that 90% guarantee. Rapid also offers feasibility studies, which tells you if the project is, well, feasible. I would recommend these for any large startup loan because it protects you and it protects the borrower and helps you get more good deals done. Go to rapidbusinessplans.com to set up your Get Acquainted call today. Find out why so many top producing BDOs recommend Rapid to their small business borrowers. We're going to leave a link in the show notes just for our Art of SBA listeners. Now let's get back to the show.
I think people are willing to buy businesses. I think we saw interest rates that really spiked for a while and things slowed down maybe for a minute. But overall, people are still willing to go out there and buy. And I think that's been interesting from a credit perspective because we all have our, 2 or 3% adjustment to say if interest rates went up, could this deal still cash flow? And for most of our careers, that was probably never an issue, but now it has become an issue. So I thought you'd see a bigger slowdown, but honestly, like you haven't seen that. People are still out there willing to buy, which makes me wonder when interest rates drop and we see the inverse effect of interest rates dropping and then prices increasing, are we going to see another big flood of SBA loans out there? And that could just gear up for a lot of work for all of us. So I think that's something that we'll find out, but it's really important that we focus on our training. So when we do have multiple deals start to stack up, do we have the right knowledge to get through those deals?
100%. I mean, last fiscal year was I would say the best year ever for SBA. 2021, I think, might have beat it because of the free money stuff. But last year was a normal year, and it was our best year ever as a normal year. And I just looked at the fiscal year Q1 numbers, and 20,000 units authorized in the 7A program. 20,000 last year we did 70,000. So 20,000, if you annualize it, you're at 80,000, right? So that would be even more increase, which is crazy. So you might be right on that one, Rob.
I think you kind of touched on it earlier, Ray, that everybody's so busy right now. So I think that with the COVID idle programs that were out there, a lot of people had no idea what SBA was until then. And so all of a sudden it's all over the news. Everybody's heard about it, and they're realizing and recognizing that there's a resource out there that's available to them that they had no idea was there. And so now everybody's just flooding in, trying to take advantage of that, which, like you say, $500,000 deal is a lot more complex than some of the $5 million deals out there. But so it just keeps us moving and keeps us on our toes, and just seeing a variety of transactions and things that happen. Like no deal is the same, so you're learning from every single deal you do, and that's just great for us that are still growing.
The small loans is what excites me, because I mean the SBA has made a concerted effort to increase the small loan stuff, and you are seeing that shops are figuring out different ways to be more efficient to get those processed. So you're seeing this average loan go down year over year, and that excites me, but it also concerns me because those are where the requirements are the loosest, and the default rates are going to be higher, and there's no SBA guarantee fees to offset it, the losses. So it's just like that's the biggest trend I've seen. I think that's really one of the biggest ones over the last couple of years.
For me, the industry trend that both excites and concerns me is the use of AI. I think that has been in the works for a while. Auto spreading has been something that people have been trying to perfect for a long time. But I think it is both exciting and nerve-wracking a little bit. Fundamentally, when something's new and unknown, I think people are going to be a little apprehensive about it. But I think responsible use of AI could really just transition to this into like probably the fastest evolution that we've seen in the industry. I think the involvement of the DOGE and whatever recommendations are made could potentially impact the way that SBA is done in the future. I think there are a lot of negative impacts that need to be addressed depending on how AI is used. But I mean, that is definitely a factor to keep your eyes on.
Yeah, and from what I know about the SBA industry, given the fact that AI the last couple of years has been, and actually it really goes back a lot more, but it just now became sort of like, it like broke this barrier with the large language models like ChatGPT, and now it's like people are seeing it firsthand. But honestly, it's been going back several years. I mean, OpenAI
for a while, yeah.
But for us, so now that everyone's like openly, focused, like every public company is like AI focused, that I think it will take over our industry in 20 years because we're about 20 years behind everyone else. So, but no, there are going to be a few shops that are more technologically savvy, probably some non-banks, already seeing it, and I think it could be insane. I mean, I honestly think I'm going to be able to type in like underwrite this deal, upload package, credit memo, comes out in 5 minutes type of thing. And then it's like, okay, now we're checking that 25-page write-up. Because the auto spread's happening, it's going to highlight the different trends year over year for you to hone in on. So that's something like an underwriter would go to now and right away and skip right past spreading, skip right past analyzing to now just getting answers essentially. And you really don't even need to do that. I mean, then it can just say, all right, why did COGS decrease by 10% year over year? And that can just be a question that just automatically gets asked to the borrower. At the end of the day, I think 90% of the underwriting is going to be AI with credit people coming in at that last 10% to just check everything and make decisions.
I think that is probably a model that we'll see in the future. I don't know how soon in the future. I think that this is where sort of that experience, but more expensive credit officer is going to come into play. I think if that is the route, we'll see more senior credit officers that have maybe delegated an authority of up to $1 million, and they're doing the more art-worthy version of credit underwriting. And once the task-oriented portions are taken away by AI, um, Mike, the negative of all of this is what happens to all those jobs, right? Now we've eliminated loan coordinators. We've eliminated credit analysts. We've eliminated junior underwriters. We only have a need for senior credit officers who will ultimately leave. So where's our pool of people as replacements when we go in, right? So I think this is why I preface it with responsible use of AI and really like scaling this up. There are some interesting people involved with the DOGE that have access to AI. I'm interested in seeing how that impacts government efficiency.
When you talk about responsible, though, if you're in management and let's say upper management, your responsibility is to the shareholders, Jane. And so you are, morally obligated to fire all your underwriters when you get to that point and use AI. But I think that honestly, the closers are the safest jobs. Like honestly, a good closer, like there's zero that it like, I just don't see it happening. Like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, even with the closers, right? Like if you get reliable AI that can read through documentation to see if things are recorded, if the proper wording is there, if thanks to some new friends that we won't plug here as a free source or as a freebie, but to my understanding, the possibilities with AI are truly endless. And if you build it properly with the proper foundation, you can really do a lot with it. So it's not to say that no one is safe. I think everyone can be safe, but it's really thinking through the evolution of this program.
Like the closer to me though is such a dynamic position where it's like you're sort of coordinating this dance between 10 different parties and you're just juggling all these things. And I just can't that's the one thing I can't wrap my head around, how a closer would ever be, a good closer would ever, I have to always preface with a good closer would ever be replaced.
The closer's job is kind of like riding a bus, right? You're driving a bus and you've got people coming on, you got people coming off,
getting off.
Yeah. So you're just kind of, like you said, making sure that everybody's interacting in a productive way, in a respectful way, and making it easier for everybody is the goal. But yeah, there's just so much that goes into that closing aspect of it. And when I first started in SBA, I was shocked because it was the first time I'd ever worked somewhere where my manager could do exactly what I do. Like they're teaching me how to close a loan, and if I'm gone, they can step in and do my work. I've never had a manager before that could do that.
Wow.
Or maybe wanted to, right?
Yeah,
Or was willing
exactly.
to, right?
Yeah, willing to, exactly.
Molly, I wanted to ask you, so you said bus. Okay. What do you think about this analogy? So we're going to be debuting this at our summit next week, Rob. So we will have already had this by the time this comes out. But we're calling them airplane like pilots. You take off, closing kickoff call. You're in the air. There's usually turbulence. Everyone's understands that, but you have the lives of every passenger on that plane in your hands. And not only do you have to get them home safely, if you really want to be a good SBA lender providing good experience, you need a smooth landing every single time. And it's just such a stressful job. Like who wants that job? Like
I do.
We
I
do,
love it.
apparently.
Yeah.
that takes a very special person to like, because that's just like a really difficult, to me it's always been the most challenging job, just because like that last stretch of closing there's just so much emotion and intensity and pressure, and you're just like trying to get it closed, and you've got all these people coming at you. So Rob, what's your take on technology and how it's like impacting us now?
I think when we look at AI or new technology, it's only as good as our ability to communicate with it. So we can talk about how cool it is that it can do stuff for us. But if we can't tell the programmers or the technology exactly what we need, and we can describe that fully, we're never going to be able to get the output that we want. So we can talk about technology all we want, but I think a different way I look at this is saying, our communication skills and our ability to describe, detail, and teach have to become so much better. When I've worked with developers, if that's a human developer or with AI like ChatGPT, I have noticed that my ability to describe and explain exactly what I want struggles. Because if I can't explain that to them, I get a product that's, no, this isn't what I wanted. And you start pointing your finger at someone else. So it's really cool what it can do, but I think we have to become better storytellers and better just descriptive skills moving forward if we really want to use technology to our advantage.
It's all about the prompting. It's like the new form of coding, right? Like, yeah, but it's going to be for everyone. So we're kind of wrapping this conversation up, and I want to kind of finish on innovation, because the industry is ripe for innovation. It's happening, but slowly and painfully. And the folks in charge of the SBA divisions, by and large, they came up in the 90s and 2000s, and they're doing what they think is best based on the models they know. But truthfully, like in Silicon Valley, for example, like people bringing these innovations to market, they're in their 20s and 30s. Not trying to make this an age thing, but like, we are the more up and coming sort of generation of leaders within the industry. So I'm just curious, like, how can we innovate the industry? Do you guys have any ideas like on how we can bring change and improvements to SBA lending?
One thing that I noticed from working in one shop for 7-8 years and then moving to about 3 or 4 different shops. Rob, you were mentioning this before or earlier about getting new ideas and new ways of doing things and new viewpoints on credit. Kind of that cross-pollination has happened a lot since COVID. Like the SBA, people are working 9 months here and 6 months there. And I had no idea that people looked at the SOP differently. Like it was the same people that I was working with for 7 years. And then I go to this other place and it took me like a month to realize there's a different way to do things. And I think just keeping that mindset that if somebody new comes on board, don't ever say we've always done it this way, because that's just an excuse to not try something new because you're afraid. Let's just listen to what people have to say and give them the benefit of the doubt and try it.
That's the first step in the program, is admitting that, things might be able to get done in a different way. But yeah, you're right. Interpretations, I think we call it. Everyone has their own interpretation of the SOP, and that only was multiplied in, the recent year or so with some of these new, never before seen, rules that have come out. So, which I think has created the environment for innovation. The SBA is telling us, innovate. We're throwing out the playbook. We're starting over. We're doing small loans. We're doing partial change of ownerships, equity injection, you tell me. It's just like they're giving us a lot of rope. Hopefully we don't screw it up, but it's a different podcast. I want to keep it on innovation, guys. Like what's the problem we're trying to solve with innovation? I should start there. Like, what do you think?
Again, this is sort of a problem that I don't know exactly how we're going to fix in the immediate future, but something that I think would impact the industry across the board is E-Tran. Everybody has to use it, but it is not even close to an effective platform to be used consistently through the life of the loan. There's problems everywhere. I think that if there is an opportunity to revisit E-Tran and its efficiency and getting sort of to the point that both Rob and Molly made, building a better foundation with a full understanding, with collaborators that are doers, like the people on this call involved with SBA and E-Tran or whatever company is behind the platform itself. I think that innovating, evolving, bringing that platform that everybody uses up to date and making it reliable would be fantastic.
All right, so you're just shooting for the moon here. We're just gonna, turn E-Train into a modern day technology. Okay.
If they're looking at everything, right? The Department of Government Efficiency, that's like everything.
No, you're right. I mean, we should be thinking big with this stuff. Like, where are we spending time?
Yeah, why not?
Where are we wasting
Right?
time? Where are we doing things that are
Where's
just
the money
silly?
going?
I got one.
Mm.
Let's get rid of EPCOC leases. I don't know why I always like to bring this up, but why do you need a lease between you and yourself? It's just a piece of paper.
Right.
You're not going to sue yourself.
That's to insulate the entity, sort of, right?
It's so fun to try to teach to try to explain that to your borrowers too. Like, why am I signing this twice? Why do I need to say that I'm going to let myself into the building that I own? Yeah.
And why not make that do it? You're going to make equity injection do what you do. You're going to make verifying the injection. Two huge things. But we definitely need that EPCO lease. And oh, by the way, if it's only 24 years and 11 months, that's a denial.
Yeah.
Well, but just adjust the term of the loan, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, amortization.
I'm innovating here. I'm innovating.
I'd love to see less insulation. I think that's coming up, right? Like entities that own entities that own entities, like the corporate veil is long gone. The practice of having multiple LLCs holding each other because you think that we're not going to come after the guarantee. That used to work in the commercial space. Even within the commercial space, that's changing. SBA never, as far as I know, since it started in the 80s, they always pierce through the veil, but it's senseless. We're on to you.
And well, you're seeing that more now with some of the folks because buying a business now has caught the attention of people who are more sophisticated, coming from like private equity and things like that.
More investor type people.
Oh, I've seen org charts. I got to scroll to kind of get to the bottom of it. Rob, take us home, man. What innovation would you like to see done?
Probably credit memos that are easier to read. I think everyone has their own tendencies of like what needs to be in there versus what doesn't need to be in there. And I think it kind of goes back to what Molly was saying, like interpretation is so different. So I think if we had a credit memo that was a little bit more organized, saying this helps us to achieve our eligibility, credit, and prudent lending qualifications, and then everything else we know we can get documentation for or something else. Because sometimes when I'm reading these credit memos at any shop, it's always like we're writing in these boilerplate pieces of information. So when an SBA auditor comes through, they can say, "Oh yeah, you looked at this."
How about when you copy and paste directly from the SOP? This is why we're doing it, and then a page and a half.
Yeah, so I think just making those more concise, and I think that will help with the underwriter turnaround time, because it can be the quickest piece of this entire process, right? Because usually the underwriters are with the loan the least amount of time in comparison to everyone else. But how do you make that process even quicker?
Such a good point, because it's like, is anyone putting any thought into the credit memo structure and stuff like that? Like,
Oh my gosh, you're hurting my feelings. You know how much thought I put into my credit templates when I've made them?
no, I
So much
don't. Tell
thought,
me.
so much thought. I was just, when Rob was talking, I was like, man, I could talk about this for like a half an hour.
Yeah, right?
I saw you. You're like,
Yeah.
I've never seen someone get so excited from credit memo discussion.
The reality is that there are multiple audiences within the credit memo. The underwriter is touching it for the least amount of time within the life of the loan, but everybody touches that thing. And I can tell you, any good underwriter is proud of the things that they put together. Good underwriters put things in there because they're purposeful. A good underwriter will be concise about it. Like, I know that I've had the tendency to go on for a hot second. So, but you've got to get concise and purposeful when it comes into a credit memo. For myself, when I've developed templates, uh, as far as the way that it's organized, when it comes to approving, like quick approvals, and for the closers, anything that those two people need to see are going to be in the first few pages or the last few
Yeah.
pages. The stuff in the middle is for the credit manager and the auditors, and the way that that is presented needs to be concise and purposeful for those readers. Everything that's in there is necessary. I can tell you, when you go after the guarantee with the SBA, they're gonna look at every single page in there. So it behooves any reader to read all of it, if they can. Right. I understand, especially if you're at a shop that's got multiple layers. You've got an underwriter, a credit manager, and then like maybe a team lead, and then the chief credit officer, and God forbid, a loan committee.
Right.
By the time it gets to maybe a loan committee type person, they need to be able to see strengths, weaknesses, mitigants, exceptions, all on that front end. What is the seal? And then on the back, they need to know what we're going to be looking at for conditions and add whatever conditions and covenants they need. I don't expect them to check whether or not my analysts spread it right. I expect my credit manager to make sure that their credit underwriter did their stuff right. Right. So I think that there is a way for it to be palatable for multiple audiences. A lot of people have moved to new LOSs that sort of have that built into their process, which is good for eliminating these touch points. So, like, this is where tech comes in, where that would be good, but it's setting a good foundation. If you've got a newer shop, or if you're starting a new shop, setting that foundation with doers. So even as it relates to my shooting for the stars, if they were going to revisit E-Tran, I'd like to see them invite people like us to Washington and like talk about E-Tran, and let's talk about the process.
All right.
Like, hey Elon, holler at me.
That Doge. Well, that would be awesome. And I mean, it sounds like we can do a whole episode on credit memos. And if we do that here, Jane, I promise I will invite you back, because you're talking about like the underwriter, and they have sort of like the credit memo, and they're filling it in. They're putting all the things in there, and that's kind of up to them. And they all have their own sort of style and approach to it. In my head, I was thinking like, throw out the whole thing. Like, I don't even know. I honestly, I don't know what I'm saying, but get rid of credit memos. No. I want to end here, and I want to say another innovation, and then I'm not gonna let anyone talk. Let's stop asking for things we don't need. Okay, that's it, guys. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's so. Honestly, we're going over. So I just want to thank you guys so much for being part of this. This is one of my favorite things I've done episodes wise on the podcast. I thought we got like a ton of great insight here. But that wraps us up. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Ray. Yeah, it was fun.
All right, that's it for this week's episode. If you want more SBA content, you can sign up for our monthly newsletter and check out our sister shows, SBA Today and The BDO Show. We'll leave a link in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode of the Art of SBA Lending. Ta-ta.